Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do what will hopefully be a fun video, and that is sharing with you a whole bunch of popular horror books that I have not read and don't plan to. This video is mostly meant to be fun, but it's also a response to a lot of comments I get. People constantly saying, have you read this, or when are you going to read this? And so I just want to share some books that I don't plan to read for various reasons, which I'll get into in the video. But before we get started, I feel like I need to give the usual booktube disclaimer that if you love these books, if you like them, there's nothing wrong with that. I am not hating on these books per se. I just know my own reading tastes, and I don't believe that these books are the kind of books that I'm going to like, and I unsurprisingly do not go out of my way to read books that I don't think I'm going to enjoy. So that is what's going on here. If that sounds good, definitely hope you stick around. All right, let's get started. First, let's talk about a big classic, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This, of course, is the iconic classic story that is the roots of both science fiction and horror, and it's written by a female author. So lots of reasons that I should like it, but I don't think it's going to be up my alley because of the age of the book. I am really hit or miss when it comes to classics, especially older classics. And I have heard from other readers that it's much more of a literary book, and it's really not horror. The adaptations are quite different than the original material, and I just don't think it's going to be up my alley. I've kind of looked at it, I've read the first few pages a few times, and I just keep saying nope, I don't think it's for me, and I don't feel motivated to push myself through just for the sake of saying I've read that classic. Next up, we have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, and this is one I understand is a classic gothic story. I believe it is a ghost story, and I should mention for a lot of these books I'm going to keep the synopsis pretty brief only because I don't typically know a lot going into books, and so for books I haven't read like these, I'm not going to have really detailed descriptions. This one I'm steering away from, again because it's a classic, and again also because of the gothic description. I just don't tend to get along with gothic fiction. You're going to notice that a few times in this list. And yeah, I just think I'm going to find it really boring and dry, and I just don't feel motivated to pick up something only to give you that short and sweet review that I didn't like it. Next, I plan on skipping The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. This is a horrific story that is inspired by true events following a horrific thing that happened to a girl next door in a neighborhood. And I don't want to read this one for a few reasons. I have read more by Jack Ketchum before, and I didn't really love it. I read his Cannibal story, and I am just turned off by the subject matter because it's inspired by real life. I don't think I really want to go there, if I'm honest. I know this book is super dark. People say it's highly disturbing, which normally is something I seek out, but I don't like my fiction to be pulling from reality, not to that degree. I don't want to get enjoyment from something that leans so much into true crime. And so I'm just not really excited to pick it up. I've also heard it's very similar to a book that I previously read, Let's Go Play at the Adams, which I absolutely hated. I ranted about in a vlog, and yeah, I just don't think I'm gonna like this one. So I'm planning on skipping it over. Next, we have The Hunger by Alma Katsu, and this is a historical horror that involves cannibalism. And while I have had a hit or miss relationship with cannibalism stories, I'm very hit or miss with horror that involves historical settings in general. I don't read a lot of historical fiction, and this one particularly is set during an American time period that I know very little about and just don't care a lot about. So I, again, just don't see myself loving it. Again, I know it's by a female author. I want to love it. I know it's very renowned and respected, and again, I just don't want to seek out a book just to give it a lousy review when other people love it and I know it's just not my taste. So again, that's why I'm going to skip it over. I also don't plan on reading the other author's book, The Deep, which again, historical fiction, doesn't sound like it'd be up my alley. Next up is White is for Witching by Helen Eliyomi, and I probably just butchered the author's name, and this is one that is described as literary horror, which sometimes works for me, but I don't know if this one is going to. I think it's a bit of a ghost story, maybe a haunted house story, and the cover is beautiful. Again, I'm always looking to read more diverse fiction, but I just feel like this one's going to be a miss, and I don't want to take the time to review something just to complain about it. So probably not going to happen unless maybe it shows up on my book club list, and then I would push through for the sake of my book club. Moving on, we have Amityville Horror by Jay Anson, and this is technically a piece of nonfiction, but I think a lot of people like myself see it as more of a horror fiction that is supposedly inspired by real events. I am not interested in reading this one for a few reasons. One being the fact that it was positioned as a true event, and you find out if you read a lot of the research around this book that it really was debunked and it was just a chance for the author to become famous and, just misrepresent what was actually happening. And even as a fictional story, I'm not interested in this one because it's a haunted house story. If you've been around my channel for half a minute, you know that I don't love haunted house stories. And so to go out of my way to read an iconic haunted house story that I think I'm going to absolutely hate, I have tried reading it before. I think I tried the audiobook years ago and I found it super dry and I DNF'd it really fast, and I just have no intention to go back to that one. Just do not care about the premise around the book, don't care about the story itself, and yeah, that's a hard skip for me. Next, this one is probably going to hurt a few people, but I don't ever plan on reading The Stand by Stephen King. This is his iconic, epic, post-apocalyptic story, and I know it is so many people's all-time favorite Stephen King book, but I don't think I'm gonna like it for a few reasons. First being the fact that Stephen King, to begin with, is a very hit or miss author for me, and particularly I don't tend to get along with his longer books because I always feel like they're too long and I would like them to be edited down. Given the length of this one, I'm just very skeptical that I'll get into it, or at least stay interested in it all the way to the end of the book. And post-apocalyptic fiction is not one of my favorites, so I just cannot see this one working out for me. And I just don't want to invest the time in a book that I foresee myself really disliking, only to disappoint all the people that would watch my review and love the book and be disappointed that I didn't love it as much as they did. Along a similar line, I also don't plan on reading Swan Song by Robert McCammon. And this one hurts because I really like his other book, Boy's Life, this coming-of-age story. But this one, again, I understand is an epic post-apocalyptic story. It is long, and I just don't seek out post-apocalyptic fiction. I just find it depressing, and more so, I just find that it's all the same. I'm sure someone's gonna say that this one is quite different, that it's better than the rest, and I should give it a try. But you're gonna have to do some convincing in the comments because I just don't think I'm that interested in it, despite how much I love his other books. So again, you can always argue in the comments if you really want to convince me to pick up one of these books. Next, we have A Ghost Story by Peter Straub. This is actually one that was selected for my patron book club, and myself and almost everyone else in the group hard DNF'd it. I tried to push through and I just was not interested. It's quite a classic, but I found it very dry, and I don't like ghost stories. It goes hand in hand with haunted house stories. They're kind of one and the same, and I just could not get into the narrative at all. I just had nothing to say about it. I knew I couldn't contribute to the discussion, and I have no plans to return back to it anytime soon. So you'll have a tough time trying to convince me with this one. Next up is Unbury Carol by Josh Malerman, and this one I understand is a horror western that is pretty light on the horror elements and actually got a lot of mixed reviews. So maybe this one isn't quite so popular as the rest, but I think a lot of people picked it up because they loved Bird Box, and I was pretty lukewarm on Bird Box, which is a very unpopular opinion. I have a whole other video on my unpopular opinions of books I have finished. And so because the fact that I'm kind of lukewarm on the author to begin with, I'm just not rushing to seek out his other books. So this one I plan on skipping over. I've had no interest in picking it up myself. Next, we have If You See Her by Anya Alborn, which I believe is like a haunted house ghost story. And this one I'm putting on the list because I've read most of Anya Alborn's published books, and with one exception of one of her novellas, I have given pretty much all of them 3 stars, and I find them to be just okay. And I just don't want to go out of my way to read another horror book that I'm going to find just okay. I would rather read amazing books. I want to give you all recommendations for books that I love, that I want to recommend to you all, and I just cannot foresee myself suddenly having a change of opinion and being all over this book. So it's one of the few I haven't read by her, and I don't plan on picking up anytime soon. Next up, we have The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters, which again, I believe is a classic ghost story that is supposed to be gothic in nature, which immediately makes me not interested in it. And it's one that I'm maybe open to trying. I've never really started this one, but I just hear the labels gothic and classic, and I don't think it's going to be up my alley. I could foresee myself giving it a 3 stars and saying it's just okay, and that makes for a really boring review. Again, I find it much more fun to read and review books that I actually have something insightful or interesting to say about them. And I feel like I'm going to find that one dry and boring. I know it's a beloved one. I know a lot of booktube friends that really love it, but I just don't think it's going to be up my alley. Next we have The House of Small Shadows by Adam Neville. And this one I understand is a haunted house story involving creepy dolls. And I gotta say, the fact that there's creepy dolls involved does tempt me to check it out, but I've read 2 of the author's books before and both of them left me really disappointed. Usually I'm intrigued by the premise, which is definitely the case here, but when it comes to the actual book, I find his narrative style just does not work for me. I don't find myself immersed in the stories. I find them really dry and dull, and I feel like that's going to be the case. So again, I'm sort of tempted because I love creepy dolls so much, but I can't see this one working out, so I'm just steering clear of it and focusing on books that I do think I'm going to enjoy. And last we have Hell House by Richard Matheson, which is again a very classic haunted house story, which is the big reason I'm skipping over it, because I don't think I will enjoy this one. It's the type where you have a group of people going in to investigate a possibly possessed house, and I just never find them very scary. I never find them that interesting, probably because I don't really believe in possession of houses and all of that. It's just not something that I find overly interesting as a concept, but it pains me because I really love the author's other book, I Am Legend. So I've tried this one before just because of the author, but I never get interested in it. I find that I give up after a few pages because I'm already bored from the very start, which is again painful to stay. But I have heard mixed things about this one. I've heard it's a little bit more problematic and there's some subject matter that just has not aged well in the book, so maybe it's for the best. So that is basically it for the video, but again, if you don't mind, leave a comment down below. Of the books I talked about, are there any that you do think I should give an honest try to? I really do value all your opinions, so if enough of you tell me to try a book, I might be convinced to do so. Some of these books more than others, so make your best case down below. I'd also love to hear about a popular horror book that you have no plans in reading, and I don't mind if it's a book that I enjoy. Again, it's all different opinions, and I think that we're all adults here and can agree to disagree at times like this. If you enjoyed this video, definitely consider giving it a thumbs up, especially to counteract all the thumbs down I anticipate whenever you do an unpopular video like this. If you're new to my channel, consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror. I swear I do like horror, just not these particular books. They're just not ones I'm interested in. But I read lots of other horror as well as thrillers, science fiction, and fantasy. And if you want to hit that notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.